Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I thought I'd try and do something a little bit different, and I thought I'd give you guys kind of a walkthrough of one of my spreadsheets here where I track all of the usage data. And this is going to be for the month of February, which was pretty much the only month so far that I've had the Snowmelt system running. And so far I haven't even had to turn it on yet in March. But February was pretty busy. We got a lot of snow in February, as I'll show you here. So I thought I'd try this. I don't know how this is going to turn out. I've never done kind of a screen slash audio recording here, so figured we'll give it a shot. But as most of you know, if you've been following my channel, if you've seen some of my videos, I first fired up the Snowmelt slash Radiant side of the system on January 31st of 2021. And that video, I'll link it above, but it was the first run video, and the slab had never been turned on. It had been all through December and January, really cold temperatures, never fired, probably had 2 inches of ice underneath, maybe 2 or 3 inches of snow. So the driveway was pretty covered, pretty thick. And you'll see in that video, when I started it up, it took a while, as you can see from the data here. So I originally turned on the system at 7:36 in the morning on January 31st. And I originally had the aquastat setting for the snowmelt set to 70 with a 15-degree differential. And then what I did was at different points in time, so at 7:36, it was 28 degrees coming back from the slabs. At by 8:05, I had 65 coming back. I had 100 going out. So, that kind of was just showing me that in about 30 minutes, I had 100 going out. I was already up to 65 coming back. My temperatures to the heaters was up to 82. My total BTU readout was 223.3. And then what I was also doing is reading the gas meter. So when I first started the system, it was at 6146 CCFs. And within that first 30 minutes, I had used about 2 CCFs. Okay, and then I just kept going. So as I went down, 811, I made an aquastat setting change of 75 to 15, I think because I saw that this temp from the slabs was starting to increase so much, and there was still a ton of snow and ice on the driveway that I didn't want it to kick off at 70, so I bumped it up. Then at 812, the BTU dropped, and at 834, we were already down another 20,000 BTUs. I also showing the actual readout. So anyway, one of the things I did on the 31st that I kind of wish I hadn't done, but that's okay, is at some point in the mid-morning, I also turned on the Radiant, and I had that going. And really, the snowmelt did turn off at 8:56. So 7:36 to 8:56, it did hit an aquastat setting of 75, and it did turn off. Okay, and then it was off for about 11 minutes, and it turned on again at 9:07. Now, because there was still snow and ice on the driveway, yes, it eventually would have caught up, but also because I had the Radiant on, what I decided to do was bump the aquastat up to 85, which it never really could get to throughout the day. So pretty much from 9:07 until 18:03, which military time is what's 18, 6 o'clock, 6:03. It never turned off, so it ran pretty much all day, and that's okay. Yes, it was costing me in gas. By 6:03, I was up to 61, 65. So I had used, almost 20 CCFs. Um, you know, not my normal usage for running this, so it was costing me a little bit more to do this, but I was dialing it in. It's the first time I'd ever played with it, and so anyway, I made one of these different worksheets for every day that I ran it. And what I did was I totaled the amount of time that the Snowmelt was on, okay? And then I totaled the amount of time that the actual heaters were on. So on this particular day, the heaters were on quite a bit, most of the time. The heaters were on for 10 minutes, 10 hours and 49 minutes, and the whole Snowmelt system itself was on for 12 hours and 55 minutes. So almost the whole time that the Snowmelt was on, the heaters were on. It raises my cost per hour to run, basically. So then what I did is I would go in, I took my previous two gas bills, and I averaged my daily CCF usage, which would be for the months of January and December. I was using about 5 per day just for my normal household stuff: hot water, the furnace, cooking, clothes drying, all the stuff that uses natural gas, the heaters in the garage, all of that. And what I would do was subtract out based on the number of hours that the system was on. So if the system was on for 12 hours, I could take out roughly 2.5 CCFs for just normal usage. So here at the very end of the day at 8 o'clock at night, I turned the system off and read the meter, and I ended up at like 6170. So I used 24 CCFs for the whole day that day. And it seems like a lot. That was a lot, actually, because normally it's not running like that. I subtracted 2.7 out for normal use. I come up with a rough number of like 21.3 CCFs that it cost me just to run the Snowmelt. Okay, so then what I did is I took my most recent bill, which I think for the month of January I used 199 CCFs. So when you go in and you put in just 199, my bill was exactly 130.73. So I just basically went in and took my bill and put in the amount per CCF for the commodity, sales tax, the amount, because it's like a sliding scale. The first 4 CCFs are charged at a different rate than the remaining whatever's left, the next 46, and then anything over 50 is at an even less rate. So it's not like you can just take a rate and multiply it by your CCFs. So I put this all in here so that this number right here, 130.73, equals 199 CCFs, and this looks just like my gas bill. Okay, so then what I did was number of CCFs used for that day, I brought over from what I calculated over here. Okay, so here what I did was I added this to it, and then Excel does all the math and tells me that, okay, now my total bill is 141.07, when at 199 it was 130. It costs me roughly $10.34 to run the Snowmelt for that day, for the 31st. It cost me $10. Okay. Then I went on the 1st, February 1st. You guys can watch that time lapse in my videos. I did the same thing. I turned the system on at about 6:35 in the morning. Some of these I either wasn't there, I went to work or whatever. I wasn't there to monitor all the temperatures coming back and the BTUs, but I did always record the starting CCF, or tried to. So in this case, on the 1st, that time-lapse video that you guys can watch, the system was on for 13 hours and 21 minutes. It ran for only 6 hours and 42 minutes. Now this is more typical because it really, once it comes up to temperature, and you'll see here, like I mentioned in the continuous circulation video, I think it was, once you turn it on, it runs nonstop for like the first, in this case, it was the first hour. Okay. And then it's off for 8, and then it's on for 15 minutes again. And then it's off for 8 and it's on for 13 minutes. off for 8, on for 12. See what it's doing is as the slab is still warming up, it once the slab starts retaining all of its heat, it doesn't have to run as long to get it back up to that set point temperature on the aquastat. So it starts to run less and less and less. And eventually it evens out to where by 9:30, 3 hours later, turned it on at 6:35. By 9:35, it was off for 9, on for 10, off for 9, on for 10. And it just cycles, 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 off for 9, on for 10, just keeps going. Now this was with an aquastat of 78 and a differential of 13. So I tried that setting and played with that. And then down here eventually as the day went on, it was even off for 11, on for 8. So it was actually running less than it was off. It was off for longer, if that makes sense. So total all that up, and I end up with it running 6 hours and 42 minutes. The system was on for 13 hours and 21 minutes. I used 17 CCFs. I subtracted 2.81 for normal usage, which is based on 13 hours and 21 minutes with an average of 5. It comes back to roughly 19.81 CCFs. This amount is put over here into my formula. It runs it through my little simulated bill, tells me that the 1st of February cost me about $9.62 to run for that day. Okay, then I can go back and divide by the number of hours that it was on and find out that it really cost me 71 cents an hour to do that. So hopefully that makes sense for you guys. Same thing with the second. Starting with February 2nd, you can watch this video. The system was turned on at about 8:09 in the morning, or actually, 8:09 in the morning. I read the gas meter. It was 61.93. It ran, looks like pretty much all day. It ran for 8 hours and 35 minutes that day. And I know on some of these initial videos, the one on the 31st, the one on February 1st, I wasn't putting the little end screen there on the YouTube video that shows what the cost was to run it. I started doing that, I forget, maybe with this one, but this is how I was calculating that. Some of you were asking, how am I metering the gas? How do I know how much it's costing me? This is how I'm doing it. So on the 2nd of February, I used 13 CCFs. It was only on for 8.5 hours. It ran for 5 out of those 8.5 hours. So I subtracted 1.77 out for normal usage. That means 11.25, roughly, was just to do the Snowmelt. Cost me $5.45 when you run it through the little bill simulator here. You divide it out, that's about 64 cents an hour to run it. So as you can see, the longer it runs, usually the cheaper per hour, because most of the initial runtime is at the beginning. And then once the slab comes up to temperature, it actually runs less and less and less. So, which lowers my cost to run per hour. So the 5th and the 6th, this one was interesting because I think this is the Winter Storm Peggy video. They name them, I don't know. This was the one where we got that lake effect snow band and I was home. That was a Saturday when we got that band. So I went down and put the system in override. So it basically overrode the aquastat and just left the system on running nonstop. And you'll see that here. I turned the system on at 7:03 in the morning on the 5th. And CCFs was 62.23. Actually, I read the meter at 7:03. I turned the system on at 7:05. Okay. Looks like I bumped the aquastat setting up to 80 with a differential of 13. And then this must have been a Saturday or something because I was home because I was reading, looks like I was reading, or this could have been before work. I was reading temperatures like out to the slabs, coming back from the slabs, how long it took to get there. what the outside temperature was at the time, because outside temperature will have an effect on this as well. The colder it is, the longer it's going to take for that slab to come up to temperature. So, um, yeah, you can see here, I can go back down, and then, so here it initially ran for 1 hour and 31 minutes before it turned off, before it hit 80 and turned off. Okay, and then it started cycling 8 off, 18 on, 7 off, 15 on, 8 off, 15, 8, 14, 8, 12. See what I'm saying? As the slab increases temperature, the run time goes down. And eventually you will see the off time come up because it's not losing its heat as quickly because the slab's all nice and warm. The PEX isn't giving off, as much heat, losing as much heat to the surrounding concrete because the concrete's warm. So here by 11:29, we turned it on at 7. 4.5 hours later, we're equal. It's running for 10, it's off for 10. And then it starts to flip roughly where looks like by maybe 12:40, another hour later, it's off for 11, on for 10, off for 12, on for 8. So now it's running less than it's off. So this is where it starts to get more cost effective and efficient to run because the slab is up to temperature. Okay, so on this particular day, you'll see down here though, at some point, I think it was the next day, this was a long one because this one it ran overnight and everything. You'll see where I overrode it, and I'm trying to find that here for you guys. Yeah, right here at 11:27, and this was on February 6th. You'll see this in the time lapse if you look when we got that really, this was after overnight because I had it on all overnight if you watch the whole thing, and then all of a sudden on that second day, I put a little screen in there that talked about how we got hit with a lake effect snow band, but it couldn't keep up. And I was there, so I went down and put it in override. And when I did that, it ran for almost 5 hours straight in override. And I think at that point, even when I took it out of override, I bumped this aquastat up to 85 just to keep it a little bit warmer to help get rid of all that snow that had accumulated on the driveway. Yes, I do think if some of you might ask, do you think that it would have been okay if like you weren't home and you just left it at 80-15? Yeah, I do. I think that lake effect snow band dumped, inches, probably 3-4 inches, 5 inches of snow in a matter of, an hour and a half, and it just couldn't keep up with it. I put it in override and really just started pumping heat out there to clear it faster. Plus, I was home. This is still new. I mean, I'd only had it on for like 6 days, so I wanted to play with it. But I really do think if I hadn't have done anything and I had just left it alone, I think it would have caught up. It might have taken longer to catch up and then eventually dry out the slab, but I think it would have. I think it would have melted eventually and it would have caught up and cleared the driveway, no problem. But because I was home, I put it in override and we let it run for 5 hours. It might have cost me a little bit more money, but that's okay. I was able to turn it off sooner too. So anyway, on that particular event, that was 2 days. It ran for 35 hours and 20 minutes. Or it was on. The system was on for 35 hours and 20 minutes. It ran for 20 hours and 18 minutes. Okay. I used 50 ccfs of gas. So, when you go back and look at my January bill, I used 200 for the whole month. And I used 50 just in this event. So it's gonna cost. It definitely costs some money to run this. It's not free by any means. You're using CCFs, but anyway, I subtracted out 7.4 for normal usage based on 5 a day. This average was for December and January. February is usually colder, and it was colder. So this average CCF might be a little low because the colder it is outside, the more my house furnace is going to run, the more the garage heaters are going to run because it's colder. So maybe the average is 6, and this usage is a little less, but it's okay. 5 gets me close enough. So anyway, I used about 42 and a half just for the snowmelt, which cost me 21 bucks for those 2 days. Okay, and because it ran so long, now I'm getting down to 58 cents an hour. Now, I think this would have been much less had I not put it in override and ran it nonstop for almost 5 hours. Okay, this probably would have been like 40 cents, 45 cents. But because I did that, I burned fuel for those 5 hours straight just to help give it a kick. So, and that's okay. Here's the seventh. I don't remember the title of this video. I'll put all these up above in the YouTube cards there if you want to click on all these as you go through this. But this looks like a short 1 day event. The snowmelt system was on for 6.5 hours. It ran for 4 hours and 43 minutes. I used 11 ccfs of gas. Subtracted out 1.4 for normal use. That means 9.6 was used just for the snowmelt. It cost me about $4, $5, $4.68 to run, 72 cents an hour. Again, because it was so short, that hourly rate is a little higher. The eighth looks like I turned it on at night. I think this might be the melting snow while you sleep time lapse. Turned it on about 10:05. CCFs was at 62.99. Looks like it ran for 2 hours and 51 minutes before it turned off. Now, the one thing I didn't record here was the outside temperature. I can always go back to the historical weather data online and look that up, but something tells me it was cold because it ran for 2 hours and 51 minutes, and just to bring it up to 80. Another thing that comes into consideration is how soon was it before that it was on. So in this case, I turned it off the day before on the 7th, and let's see, what time did I turn it off at? Yeah, like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I turned it off. I didn't turn it on again until 10 o'clock the following night, the next day. So that slab had given off a lot of that heat, in that 26, 27 hour or longer period. But anyway, yeah, it burned for 2 hours and 51 minutes, brought it up to 80. And again, other than the 31st, none of these other days have the radiant into the equation, the continuous circulation and all that. I left those off just so that I could really get an accurate reading on just the snowmelt. I wanted to figure out about what it's going to cost me a month to run this with regular use. So, and again, as you can see, it was off for 9 minutes. It ran for 24. It was off for 10. It ran for 19. It was off for 10. It ran for 17. So as the slab warms, the temperatures start to even out. Okay, so here total ran for 16 hours even. I turned it off at 12:05. Looks like the following day, right around noon. And the heaters ran for 9 hours and 42 minutes of that 16 hours that the system was on. I used 21 ccfs. Subtract out for normal usage, which was about 3.33. It cost me $8.58 to run the system. For this day, for this event, about 54 cents an hour. Okay, hopefully you guys are finding this useful. This is the 14th. This is the Valentine's Day storm or snow system or whatever I named it on the time lapse. You can see the time lapse above. I also did a startup video. I think this was the first video that I did a startup on where I actually showed firing it up and everything if you're interested in that. Turn it on again. It looks like at night. This might have been the night before. I think this was the 13th. Turned it on at about it's at 8:30 p.m. Aquasat setting of 80, the differential of 15. It ran for 3 hours and 6 minutes before it hit its set point. And then again, started cycling 9 off, 25 on, 10 off, 21 on, 10 off, 16 on until that gap slowly closes. And it looks like by about 3:30 in the morning. So it took a little longer here. We were evened out where the off is equal to the run time, and then it starts to flip where it's actually off for longer than it's on. But total on time for this Valentine's Day storm was 14 hours and 2 minutes. It ran for 8 hours and 41 minutes of that. I used 20 ccfs of gas, subtracted out about 3 for normal usage, gets me 17, cost me $8.30, 59 cents an hour to run. The next was this President's Day event. This was another one where I turned it on. I did a startup video for this, and we were expecting a storm. We knew it was coming, so I preheated, quote, preheated the system. It did have some snow on it. I remember if you guys go back and look at those time lapses, when I did turn it on, it did have a light coating from just snowfall throughout the day on that day, but it did clear it off before the real storm, I guess you could say, hit. So it ran for 2 hours and 17 minutes. It was off for 10, ran for 25. But what I noticed was I got up around 2:15 in the morning that day, and I don't know, I think because I knew it was on and I knew we were quote unquote getting a storm outside, I went down to look at it and I noticed that the driveway was covered in what looked like ice. Because I think the snow, if I remember correctly, was like really wet when it came down at first, and then it got colder as the night went on, of course, and it froze. So it was having a hard time keeping up. And actually, if you look at the time lapse, it did this really cool thing where there's like air bubbles underneath the ice. And if you watch the time lapse, you can actually see the bubbles like moving around. It was kind of cool. But again, why am I running it? If I'm home and I can put it in override, I might as well do that. So I did. I went down and put it in override to help give it a kick and melt all of that. It ran for 6 hours and 50 minutes in override, nonstop. So, and again, the override overrides the aquastat where normally it would turn off at 80. It could be coming back at 90 after 6 hours. I don't think it's ever quite gotten up to that high. It might be coming back at like 86, 87, but it's not going to turn off. The aquastat will turn off, but I've got it overridden, so power is still being supplied to those relays for that electrical, for the pump. And you can see that in my electrical system overview video. If you want to know how that's wired and how that works, I explain all that. But it does look like maybe before I went to bed, around 11 o'clock, might have noticed it wasn't keeping up a little bit, so I bumped it up to 83. And then when I came down at 2 in the morning, I was like, oh, it's not. So I just turned it up to, or I put it in override. So it looks like I took it out of override about 9 o'clock in the morning. So total for this event, it ran for 25 hours, 14 minutes. The heaters were on for 18 hours and 12 minutes. Again, six of it was because I put it in override. Almost 7 hours of it was override. So that's why this is a little high. That's also going to raise my cost to run, where normally for a 25-hour event, my cost to run would be down, would be closer to like 50 cents or less. But because of those override, so anyway, subtracted out a little over 5 because it's almost 24 hours. So figuring 5 a day cost me $17.36 just to run the Snowmelt, and about 70 cents an hour to run for that. Then there was the 18th. These next few days, if I remember, were kind of like little daily storms where it was only on for a few hours each day. The 18th, it was on for 5 hours. It ran for almost 4 hours of it. Again, because the initial hit is at the beginning, 2 hours and 10 minutes of it was right at the beginning. So that's almost half the time it was on. I only used 9 ccfs of gas, so that cost me about $3.86, about 77 cents an hour. And again, the cost per hour is high because the amount of time the system was on was so low. So for the 19th, this was the time lapse that was labeled Snowmelt the Driveway for less than $4, I think was the name of it. And yeah, just that. I did it for as you can see here, about 375. So I turned the system on at about 7:50 in the morning, right before I left for work. I also read the meter at that time, 6454, and you can see here, ran for about an hour and 57 minutes before it started cycling, and then slowly started to even out. About 5 hours later, it was on and off. These last few days of time lapses, the weather was getting a little bit warmer, so really, the system probably didn't even need to run. I probably could have got away without doing it, but it was the end of the month, and I really wanted to see what a good hard month of good usage was going to cost me. So for the 19th, ran for 6 hours and 6 minutes, or it was on for 6 hours and 6 minutes. Total runtime of 4 hours exactly. Used about 9 CCFs. Subtract out 1.27 for average use for 6 hours based on 5 a day, and I came up with about 7 3/4 additional to run the Snowmelt for that day. Put it through the little bill simulator here, and it's an increase of about $3.75, 62 cents an hour to run. So not bad. Seems to be the average is hovering, depending on how long it runs, but the average seems to be around 60 cents an hour. Obviously more if it runs less and less if it runs longer. So the 20th, this was the video labeled, I think, another Saturday morning snowfall, the time lapse. This was a short one. I turned it on around 10 o'clock in the morning. Again, this was a Saturday, so I was there to monitor it. If I remember correctly, I'd have to read the description on my own video, but I think we had some snow, nothing major. Turned it on about 10 o'clock. Reading was 64.69 on the gas. As you can see, it ran for almost 2.5 hours. Then it started cycling. It was only on, the Snowmelt system itself was only on for 4 hours, 46 minutes, and the heaters ran for 3 hours and 48 minutes. So most of that time, except for an hour. Used another 9 CCFs, subtracted out a little bit less for normal usage because it ran for less, and came up with an additional 8 roughly. So it cost me about $3.89 to run it for those 4 hours on a Saturday. So, it's these little ones where you can argue, is it worth $4 to not shovel that little bit? I don't know. I mean, for me, it's much more than just the shoveling. It's where are you shoveling it to? I don't have a lot of room to put it. There's a lot of other factors there, but anyway, this one a little on the higher side because it cost me 82 cents an hour because it only ran for 4 hours. The next event was the 22nd. This one was labeled last Snowmelt time lapse, I think, of the season, which it didn't end up being. I think we got one more after this, but it was close. And again, this is one of those days where, if I remember correctly, it was breaking 32 during the day now. So the afternoons were getting up into the upper 30s. So I probably could have left this and it would have been fine. But my slab is insulated. So while everybody else in the neighborhood, while their slabs or driveways start to melt just from the heat from the ground and the sun, mine stays colder because it's not getting that assist from the earth. So turned it on at about 7:30 in the morning before work. 64.89 CCFs. It ran for 2.5 hours before it started cycling. If I remember correctly, I let this run all day because you have to run it till the slab's dry. I mentioned that in other videos, but you don't want to turn it off when it's still wet, especially if it's going to drop back below freezing, because all of that water that you've melted, the snow turned to water, it will turn to ice. And then you've either got a real big problem because it's an ice rink, or you've got to turn it on again to melt the ice. So you really want to just let it run until it's dry. So in this case, that was about 6:12 at night, ran for It was on for 10 hours and 42 minutes. The heaters ran for 6 hours and 34 minutes of that, based on an average of 5 a day. I subtracted 2 1/4 from 15. So again, I read the meter right when I turned it off. Used 15 CCF, subtracted 2 1/4, gave me 12 3/4. Ran that back over through the little bill calculator there. Cost me about $6, so 58 cents an hour. So then, one of the last ones here of the month. In fact, this right here was the last time I've turned it on. Today is March 10th. It's about 8:30 at night here, and it is 63 degrees out still right now. So nothing is on. The radiant heat isn't on. The Snowmelt isn't on. Snowmelt hasn't been on since this right here on the 23rd. So, and this day I remember debating heavily if I should turn it on or not, but I wanted to make one last time lapse. And this was the one where I think because the weather was still so warm, and because I had just run it at 6 o'clock, I just turned it off at 6 o'clock the day before, the slab was pretty warm throughout the night. So we did get some snow and it was a little windy, but none of it stuck up in the back where you park, like where I park the cars. So the only spots on the driveway that had snow were down at the end where it was blowing across the front yard. And it was projected, I think, to be 40 later in the day. So I really probably could have got away with not turning it on today, but again, I figured, why not? It could be the last one of the season. I wanted to make the last video. I also wanted to get a really good idea for a full month of February of use. So turned it on at 7:45 before I left for work. Read the meter, 6508. This one I remember watching it from the cameras from work, and by 11:45 I remember looking on there and it was dry. The whole slab was dry, and there was no snow forecasted. It was already above freezing, so I shut it off. It ran for 4 hours, or it was on for 4 hours, ran for 3 of that, and I used 8 CCFs. So you subtract out the little bit of use, normal use for that 4 hours, gives me 7.16. Run that through, cost me $3.48 for that morning, 87 cents an hour to run. So what I then did was I went back and took all of these days and I made basically a February usage report. So my billing cycle with National Fuel ended on January 26th. So I started my CCFs for the period that I'm calculating here at that number. Even though I didn't turn the snow out on until the 31st, my last bill, this was what the CCFs were at the end per the National Fuel bill. Okay. So then I pulled all the numbers from the other charts that I already showed you guys, starting CCF, ending CCF, how many I used, how long the system was on, how long the heaters were on, how much it cost for that event. And this is all just pulled right from these other tables. So cost per hour to run. And you can see here that total for the month of February, the Snowmelt was on 162 hours and 33 minutes. And the heaters of that time were on for 105 hours and 27 minutes. And it cost me about $106 extra in gas for the month of February. Now, I think this is pretty close, but I do think this is a little high because, like I said, I'm averaging my daily use that I'm subtracting out based on December and January's average daily usage. February was a lot colder. We had a lot of days in the single digits. We had a lot of days in the lower teens. So my normal usage without the Snowmelt probably might have been on average more like 6 CCFs a day or 7 CCFs a day for those days that were really cold. So my goal here, guys, when I went into this was to be around $100 a month. I figured if for December, January, February, and even March, if I could spend $100 or less a month, $400 for the winter season just to melt the driveway, I'm good with that. I'm ahead. That is better than hiring a plow service. That's what they would charge, is $400 a season, roughly around here, or 20 bucks every time they come, 25, 30 bucks if you can find them. They're not going to do the job that this does. They're going to be scraping a blade across my nice driveway. They're not going to get around the cars if the cars aren't in the garage. Who knows when they're going to come. So this, for me, then where are they putting that snow? It's all just going to get stacked up down at the end and make problems. And it's just, here I flip a switch, I go to bed, and it's gone. So I'm guessing because of just the colder temperatures in February, I would guess I'd probably have about $6 roughly just in normal use increase. So I'm right there. I mean, I'm in the ballpark. I'm right where I want it to be. So over here, on the 26th, which was the end of my billing cycle with National Fuel, over here, I read the meter again, and I used about 421 CCFs for the month of February. And when I run that through my little bill simulator here, that's about $238 is what my bill will be. So remember at 199 it was 130. So I'm about 107.84 higher. Um, you know, these are close. These numbers are close here, 107, 106, 108, we're in the ballpark. So I submitted that CCF reading to National Fuel, and I basically submitted my own meter reading because they read it like every other month. They estimate on months, and I wanted to get an accurate number in there so that I could track this. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much an overview of how I tracked this and everything for the month of February, what it cost me to run for all those videos that you saw. And I don't know, let me know what you guys think. I mean, I don't think that's too bad. I don't think that's expensive, and I'm okay with that. I also think I'm being a little, what the word is, I don't think, unless we have like a really hard winter, December of 2020 and January of 2021 here in Buffalo, we really got like no snow. So I doubt that I would have even used $20 or $40 at most in December of January of this year if I had had it up and running. We got a little bit. We got a really good storm around Christmas time. It might have ran for a day or two there, but nothing like it did in February, as you can see here. And now March, I don't, from what the extended forecast is showing, I don't think it's going to snow again yet in March. We might get a rogue storm, but it looks like it's over. So, I spent $100 for the whole season this winter and snow melted the driveway with 2 tankless water heaters. So, in my opinion, you can't beat it. But anyway, I hope you guys found this useful. If you did, let me know. Hit me up in the comments. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. I'm going to do a lot more of these. I'm going to try and do a materials list overview, like a cost, what it cost me to make. I'll also do a design one where I can walk you guys through how I did all the math and how I designed the system, how I got my BTUs, my loop lengths, my layouts, my spacing. I'll do all of that. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for being here and looking over the numbers with me, and we will catch you guys on the next one.